There are two kinds of betrayal in life, the kind you expect, and the kind that leaves you breathless. Mine came with a smile, a chai latte, and my best friend saying, "This place feels like home. I'm so proud of you, Claire." That was for months before she opened her own cafe across the street from mine, with the same lavender syrup I had spent 6 weeks perfecting, the same hand-drawn chalkboard menu I had spent nights crafting, and the same playlist humming through her speakers. She called it inspired, I called it theft. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start with how we got here, how Madison Lee became not just my business partner, but my sister in all but blood, and how she shattered everything we built together with the turn of a key and a lie wrapped in lipstick. I met Madison in college. We were the quiet girls in a sea of loud ambition, me with my sketchbooks, she with her culinary journals and mason jars full of ideas. We clicked fast. Study sessions turned into late-night dorm talks, which turned into dreams drawn in ink and caffeine. By senior year, we knew one thing for sure. One day, we're gonna open a place that feels like us. Warm, feminine, independent, a haven. 10 years later, that dream became fern and bloom. It was my baby. I had scraped every dollar, sold my car, moved back into my mom's basement just to launch it. Madison was always around, not officially on the payroll, but present. She helped me test recipes, gave feedback on interiors, sat through supplier meetings, smiled through the stress when people asked if we were co-owners. She'd laugh and say, "Oh no, Claire's the boss. I'm just her biggest fan." And I believed her. I believed her when she said she didn't want to run her own place. I believed her when she said, "I'd rather support you than deal with all that chaos myself." I believed her when she said, "This is our dream even if your name is on the lease." The first time I noticed something off was small. She came in with a new menu idea, an Earl Grey lavender scone. I blinked. "Didn't we test that 2 months ago and decide it didn't hold moisture?" She shrugged. "I tweaked it, just thought we could revisit." I said no, but she seemed irritated. Next came the supplier's switch suggestion. I found someone cheaper for the ceramic mugs. She said one afternoon. I looked up from inventory. "We use a local potter. That's part of our whole brand, Madison." She smiled. "Too sweet. Just trying to help you save." She started missing coffee deliveries, showed up late, took photos, lots of photos of the kitchen, the decor, even my recipe cards. I chalked it up to her mood swings. We've both been exhausted. What I didn't know was that while I was running payroll and negotiating with suppliers, Madison was registering a business license, designing a logo, signing a lease for the space directly across the street. She didn't even bother to name it differently, Bloom and Fern. My jaw dropped when I first saw the banner being hung. I stood on the sidewalk, keys in hand, as the man hammered the sign in, and my Madison stood under it with a clipboard and a grin. I waited for her to see me. She didn't flinch. Just waved like we were still girls in a dorm room, dreaming aloud, like she hadn't just lit a match to my life's work. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling fan, each blade slicing through the silence like it was mocking me. Across the street, Bloom and Fern was getting ready to open. Same soft gold lighting, same pastel furniture, even the community corner idea where we displayed local artists and their work. That was mine. Madison had told me once, "That's what sets you apart. It feels like more than a cafe now." She had recreated every detail down to the mason jar tips labeled Dream Fuel. The betrayal wasn't just that she opened a shop. It was that she watched me build mine, layer by layer, and copied it brick by emotional brick. The worst part? Our regulars started noticing. "Hey, Claire, did you see the new place? It looks kinda like yours." Kinda. I wanted to scream. "It's a carbon copy." But I didn't. I smiled, said something polite, bit my cheek so hard it bled, because if I snapped, I'd be the bitter one, the dramatic one, the overreacting female founder. I told myself, focus on your store, protect your peace, but peace doesn't last when the person who betrayed you is sipping coffee across the street from your window. I decided to confront her. The day before her grand opening, I crossed the street, heart pounding in my ears. Madison was arranging dried flowers in a vase, peonies, my favorite. "Hey," I said, forcing my voice steady. She turned, as if I was just another customer. "Oh, Claire, what a surprise." "A surprise," I said. "You opened a store identical to mine across the street, and that's a surprise." She blinked. Slow and deliberate. "Claire, it's not identical. I mean, sure, some things overlap. We have similar tastes, but there's room for everyone, room for everyone." That phrase hit me like ice down my spine. "Did you think I wouldn't notice?" I asked, voice tight. She sighed, actually sighed like I was being exhausting. "I just thought we always talked about creating something together, and when I realized I wanted to do it too, I didn't want to ask for permission. You don't own lavender scones and flower walls." I stared at her. That's when I knew. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't confusion. It was entitlement. She believed she had a right to my vision because we were friends. Because she had been there, because she thought proximity gave her ownership. I walked out. I didn't yell, didn't cry. But I felt something in me shift. This wasn't just business betrayal. It was emotional. Theft. She'd taken my trust, my mentorship, my sisterhood, packaged it into an aesthetic, and sold it back to the neighborhood like it was hers. Opening day came. I watched from my cafe window as a line formed across the street. Her ribbon cutting made the local newspaper. She smiled wide. Press ready. There was even a quote. It's always been a dream of mine to bring beauty and calm into people's daily coffee rituals. I read that line 10 times. Not once did she mention me. Not once did she acknowledge the woman whose dream she plagiarized. In the weeks that followed, business slowed. My regular split between the two cafes. Some were polite, pretending not to see the tension. Others switched loyalties entirely, drawn to the buzz of a new spot. It wasn't just the money. It was the ache. To stand inside something you bled for, only to watch someone else profit off its mirror image. And she smiled through it all like this was fair game. Like ambition justified betrayal. I started questioning everything. Was I naive? Was I too open? Did I hand her the blueprint without realizing? The worst part was missing her. Even through the pain, I catch myself thinking of texting her, telling her about a rude customer or a new pastry idea. But then I'd remember, she already knew the recipes. She already had the playlist. She didn't need me anymore. She had already copied enough. The mornings got quieter. My baristas would whisper behind the counter, trying to stay upbeat. I could feel their discomfort, like they didn't know whether to ask me about Bloom and Fern, or pretend it didn't exist. Some customers tried to comfort me. An older woman named Jana, who came in every Tuesday for her chamomile tea, squeezed my hand and said, "Don't worry, sweetheart. The real ones know where the heart is." It was kind, but kindness couldn't cover the rising cost of rent and the slowing foot traffic. I'd sit after hours, alone at the window, staring at her glowing sign across the street. It was like staring at a version of myself, filtered, shinier, more marketable. But fake. It didn't have the tears I cried scrubbing tables at midnight. It didn't have the stories behind every mismatched chair I thrifted myself. It didn't have me. One night, I pulled out the old notebook, the one I used in college with Madison. It had doodles of floor plans, dream menus, napkin sketches of coffee cups with floral designs. I flipped to a page where we wrote, in messy all caps, rule number 1, never sell out. Rule number 2, never sell each other. I stared at those lines until they blurred. She hadn't just broken the rules, she burned them. And yet a part of me still wanted closure. So I emailed her, not to attack, not to beg, just to ask, why? Madison, I just need to understand. You said you never wanted this. So why now? Why like this? She replied the next morning, a short email. No greeting, no apology. Claire, I'm sorry if you feel hurt, but I needed to do something for myself. You had your chance, I waited years. I'm not your shadow. That line, "I'm not your shadow," hit me like a slap. I never made her feel small, at least. I didn't think I had. Was that what she had felt all along? That I was a leader and she was a sidekick? That helping me meant silencing herself? Maybe. To her, betrayal looked like liberation. But to me, it was still betrayal. And intentions didn't undo damage. Weeks passed. My landlord hinted at raising rent. Suppliers started calling for payments I was late on. I had to let one of my part-timers go. The stress started showing up in my body. Sleepless nights, shaking hands while pouring espresso shots, snapping at small things. I wasn't bitter. I was breaking. But I didn't want to quit because Fern and Bloom wasn't just a business. It was my identity. My proof that I could build something from nothing. That I mattered. Madison had taken so much, but she couldn't take that from me. So I started to fight back, not with revenge, but with evolution. If she wanted to copy my past, I created a future she couldn't imitate. I redesigned the cafe. New colors, new seating layout, new specialty menu items with locally sourced ingredients no one else had access to. I collaborated with real artists for limited run mug designs. I hosted weekly open mic nights. I brought in therapists and small business coaches to run empowerment talks for women in business. It wasn't easy. Some nights I still cried behind the counter after closing, but I was doing it. I even changed our slogan. The old one had been, "Sip soft, stay a while." Now it read, "Original from the first pour." Some customers noticed, some didn't, but I felt it in my bones. That phrase was for me. Then came the event, a charity pop-up market for local entrepreneurs. I had applied to host it months ago. Before all this happened, the organizer emailed, "We'd love to hold it at your cafe. You were our first pick." It was validation, a reminder that I still mattered. The weekend of the event, people poured in. There was music, laughter, a line out the door. Even people who had switched to Madison's shop came back that day curious. Smiling, impressed. Someone whispered, "It feels alive in here again," and I smiled. Because for the first time in weeks, I felt alive. The market weekend felt like a rebirth. I stood behind the counter in my favorite linen apron, hair tied up, face flushed with the warmth of real joy, not forced smiles or fake calm. People filled the space with stories and energy. Every cup I served felt like a quiet victory. I didn't think about Madison. Not once. Not until she walked in. I saw her before she saw me. She paused at the threshold, just inside the door, scanning the crowd. Her hair was curled perfectly. Her dress casual but curated. She always knew how to present. People parted around her like she was a guest of honor. A few waved. One of the local bloggers asked to take her picture. She said no, smiling politely. Then her eyes landed on me. We locked gazes for a heartbeat, and just like that, the noise fell away. She walked over, stopping a few feet from the register. "I heard you were hosting this," she said. "It's beautiful." I nodded, my hands trembling under the counter. "Thanks, it's for small business owners. Thought it'd be good to uplift people who don't get the spotlight." I knew the jab was sharp. I let it land. She didn't flinch. "Claire," she said quietly, "can we talk?" "Not here, just sometime soon." I stared at her. The nerve. To show up, to compliment what she had stolen, to ask for a moment like this wasn't layered in months of silence, bitterness, and bruised trust. "Why now?" I asked. "Because things are going well again." She didn't answer, just shifted her weight. Her eyes suddenly glassy. "Because I miss you," she whispered. I turned away, not out of cruelty but to protect what I had just begun rebuilding. Inside me, "Enjoy the market," I said, voice neutral. "It's open to everyone." She nodded, stayed a minute longer, then left, and that was it. No dramatic confrontation. No apology that fixed everything, just history standing in front of me. And then walking out the door. That night, as I swept the floor and stacked the chairs, I felt lighter, not because the pain was gone, but because I had stopped waiting for closure from the one who broke me. Weeks passed. Madison didn't reach out again. Her cafe stayed busy, polished, pretty, but I stopped checking their reviews, stopped comparing our sales, stopped caring. I had my hands full anyway. A new wave of community projects, a city-wide Women Who Brew campaign invited me to be a panelist. I was mentoring to younger women fresh out of college, full of big dreams and sketchpads. They reminded me of us. Back when it all felt possible. One afternoon, while reorganizing the supply shelf, I found an old Polaroid. Me and Madison, sitting on the cafe floor, paint-stained overalls, coffee cups in hand. She was laughing. I was mid-blink. It was from the week we first painted this place. I sat on the stool, photo in hand. Heart aching was something complicated. Grief. But also gratitude. Because even though she hurt me, she taught me the sharpest lessons. About boundaries, about ownership. About resilience. And strangely about love. Because sometimes the people we love the most are the ones who unintentionally tear us apart. And that doesn't mean we weren't real. It just means we stopped walking the same path. That night, I did something wild. I wrote her an email. Not to rekindle, not to fight, just to close the loop. "Madison, I saw the article on your cafe in the lifestyle magazine. You looked proud. You should be. I won't lie, this journey has been the hardest of my life, but it's also shown me exactly who I am. I hope you're finding peace." I found mine. I didn't wait for a response, didn't need one. The next morning, I hung the Polaroid behind the counter, not as a memory of betrayal but as a reminder of everything I survived. Spring turned to summer. The city breathed differently when the sun stayed longer. My cafe window stayed open till twilight, letting in warm breezes and the scent of nearby magnolia trees. Business picked up in small, steady ways, not viral, not flashy but real. People came not just for coffee, but for comfort. To be seen, to be known. That's what Fern and Bloom had become, a place where pain and hope could sit across from each other at the same table. One Friday morning, a young woman, maybe 22, anxious hands, chipped nail polish, walked up to me after I handed her a latte. "Are you Claire, the owner?" I smiled. "That's me. You okay?" She nodded, then bit her lip. I just wanted to say thank you. I've been coming here during my lunch breaks. I work nearby, and this place, it feels like breathing again." She looked like she might cry, so I said the only thing I knew to say, "You're always welcome here." After she left, I sat down with my own coffee, and for the first time in months, I allowed myself to feel proud without guilt. Later that evening, I got a text, unknown number. "Saw your photo in the Women in Business blog. You look like you made it." Just that. No punctuation. But I knew who it was. Madison. I didn't reply. I didn't need to, because I had made it, not in some glamorous empire-building way, but in the quiet, honest kind of way, the kind that doesn't need To scream for attention. The kind that knows what it's made of still. That night, I dreamt of her. We were back in college, sitting on the dorm floor, making mood boards with cut-up magazines and glitter glue. In the dream, I turned to her and asked, "Do you think we'll be friends forever?" And she smiled, but didn't answer. I woke up with tears on my pillow. Some griefs don't disappear. They just grow new edges. 2 weeks later, we hosted a founder's circle night. Women from all over town. Some with brick-and-mortar shops, others with Etsy stores and sketchbooks full of dreams. We talked failure, financing, family tension. We talked betrayal, and I shared not the names, not the dirty details, but the heart of it, of trusting someone with your whole dream only to watch them carve out their own by cutting into yours. I was honest about how I broke, how I rebuilt. How sometimes strength isn't loud, it's just continuing. When I finished, there was silence, then applause, then hugs. Later, one of the newer women, a baker named Elena, pulled me aside. "I almost gave up last month," she confessed, "thought no one cared. But your story, it gave me breath." That night, I stood alone in the cafe. The lights low, the tables quiet. I walked to the photo wall where I had begun collecting Polaroids of the women who had walked through these doors with something to give. Some smiling, some crying, all powerful. I added a new one, me, holding a sign someone had scribbled that night. Built, broken, bloomed. I stood back and looked at the wall, and I realized I hadn't just reopened a cafe. I had created a sanctuary, not in spite of the betrayal, but because of it, because what rises from ruin remembers where it came from. Late July brought unexpected stillness. The market crowd thinned under the heat. The baristas worked slower, the music softer. I didn't mind. Quiet gave space for reflection. It was during one of those slower mornings that I saw her name again, not in a message, not in a blog post, but on a flyer tacked to the community board. Outside a bookstore downtown, Madison Reese, From Coffee to Community. A free talk on women entrepreneurship. My stomach flipped. She was speaking at a business summit, one I had attended the year before, back when I couldn't even say her name out loud. Without choking on it, I stared at the flyer for a long time. Would she mention me? Would she rewrite history to fit her narrative? Would she call what she did growth? I didn't know. But I knew I wasn't going to attend. Not because I was afraid, because I didn't need to anymore. Her version of the story no longer defined mine. Instead, I poured my focus into something new. A mentorship program. We called it Second Bloom. A place for women starting over from job loss, from burnout, from betrayal. A space to regroup and regrow. Each Wednesday evening, we met after hours, mismatched chairs, leftover pastries, open journals. Sometimes we cried. Sometimes we argued. But always we showed up. There was something sacred about it. Not a stage, not a performance, just rawness and resilience in equal measure. One night, as we wrapped up, Elena said something that stayed with me. "You turned heartbreak into habitat." The others nodded. And I swallowed the lump in my throat, because yes, this was more than a comeback. It was an entirely new creation. One afternoon in August, a familiar face walked into the cafe. My mom. She hadn't visited in a while. We had spoken here and there. She'd watched from the sidelines, supported, cautiously. But now, she stood across from me at the counter, her cardigan neat, her face soft. "Claire," she said, "I saw the article about your mentorship group. That's something." I smiled. "Thanks, Mom. It means a lot." She hesitated, then reached into her purse. "I brought something for the wall." I tilted my head. She pulled out a small, framed photo. It was me as a child, maybe 5, wearing an oversized apron, holding a plastic teacup with exaggerated pride. She set it on the shelf behind the register. "You've always known how to host a room," she said, eyes glinting. I bit back tears. "Thanks for believing in me." She gave a quiet laugh. "I didn't always, but I do now." That night, I stayed late, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. The cafe was more than just mine now. It had become a mosaic of every woman who had walked through the door and dared to begin again. It pulsed with their laughter. Held their secrets in its walls, and hummed with the kind of strength that doesn't ask for permission. As I swept the floor, I found a torn piece of paper under one of the tables. It was a receipt, crumpled, coffee stained, but on the back was a scribbled note. "Thank you for reminding me I'm allowed to start over." No name. Just that. I pinned it to the corkboard behind the counter, right next to the photo from college, the one of Madison and me on the floor with paint in our hair. Not out of nostalgia. Not out of pain, but because both belonged here. They were both part of what built this place. Not every chapter ends with revenge. Some end with restoration. Of self, of purpose, of the pieces you thought you'd never love again. And I was learning that maybe the most powerful kind of healing is when you stop waiting for an apology and start building a life that doesn't need one. Autumn rolled in quietly. The leaves changed. The air thinned and suddenly scarves reappeared. Even the way people walked shifted quieter, cozier, like the world had exhaled and was ready to rest. Fern and bloom adapted naturally. We introduced new drinks, pumpkin spice, cardamom rose, hot honey chai. The walls smelled like cinnamon and hope. But beneath the surface, something tugged at me again. One night as I was closing up, a customer lingered, a tall man, maybe mid-30s with tired eyes and a familiar voice. Claire? I turned, heart skipping. Eli? My ex. The one who, years ago, had said, "You're too complicated to build a life with," before packing up and leaving without a real goodbye. And yet, there he stood in my cafe. In my story, uninvited, but undeniably real. "Didn't expect to find you here," he said, looking around. "This place, it's beautiful." I crossed my arms. "What brings you back?" He shrugged, stuffing his hands into his coat. "Honestly, curiosity. I was in town. I heard about your place through a friend. Thought I'd stop by." I nodded slowly. Part of me wanted to scream. Another part wanted to ask a million questions. But I'd learned not every ghost needs interrogating. "Well, thanks for stopping in," I said calmly. "The coffee's still the best in town." He smiled, sheepish, unsure. "Do you ever think about what might have been?" I let the question hang there. Let the weight of it settle. Then I shook my head. Gently. "No. I'm too busy building what is." He left soon after, taking nothing but a paper cup and a ghost of a smile. And I stood there, in the golden glow of my cafe, letting it all wash over me. I didn't feel bitter. I didn't feel bruised. I felt proud. Sometimes closure doesn't come from answers. Sometimes it comes from realizing the questions don't matter anymore. Later that week, I got an email. Subject line, feature story, women who rebuilt. A local magazine wanted to do a spread on Fern and Bloom. I read the message twice, then once more. They wanted to know about my past, my betrayal, my healing. They wanted honesty. And I debated. Did I want to open old wounds for strangers? Did I want to speak Madison's name in print? No. But I did want to tell the truth, not to shame her, but to show what survival looks like in real time. I called the editor and agreed. We met in the cafe on a cloudy Tuesday. She was kind, sharp, and curious. "Why did you start this place?" she asked. I paused because I had nowhere else to put my pain, I answered. "So I put it in the walls, in the mugs, in the music. I built the kind of space I needed when everything fell apart." She wrote quietly, then looked up, "And if she reads this?" I shrugged. "Then I hope she sees what she couldn't destroy." When the article published, I braced myself. But the messages that came weren't about Madison. They were about me. About resilience. About rebuilding. About the soft power of staying. One email read, "I was left out of a company I helped build. Thought I'd never work again. Reading your story made me believe in my hands again." I cried that night, not because I was sad, but because I finally felt seen. That weekend, the cafe hosted its first community art night. Women brought poetry, music, sketches. One girl recited a poem called Bones and Bloom. It ended with this line, "She wasn't buried. She was planted." The room exhaled. And I knew this wasn't just healing anymore, this was resurrection. It was the little things that began to feel like miracles. A regular customer learning my name, a teenager leaving a thank you note after a poetry night. The hum of laughter that lingered long after closing. I had spent so long defining my worth by who stayed. Now, I was discovering strength in who I became after they left. Then, one great Thursday morning, I saw Madison again, not in person. Not in a photo, but in a tag. Someone had posted the article from Resilient Women Quarterly with the caption, "Funny how success grows best in silence." And beneath it, someone tagged her. At Madison Reese. Design. I froze. I hadn't said her name in the article, hadn't shared exact details, but people talk. Stories travel. Especially when truth hits a nerve. The comment section exploded. Some praised me, some speculated, some dissected every word like it was an accusation. And then, Madison commented, "There are always two sides." That's all she wrote. No denial. No apology. Just a polished deflection. I stared at her words for a long time. My fingers hovered above the keyboard. For a brief moment, the old fire returned, the one that wanted to burn it all down. But I didn't reply. Not because I couldn't, because I didn't need to. Instead, I closed my laptop and walked to the back room. There, pinned to the corkboard behind the kitchen door, were handwritten notes from our customers, some funny, some heartbreaking, all real. One in particular caught my eye. This place made me feel like a person again. I touched the note gently. "That's the story I care about now." A week later, Madison emailed me. Subject, closure. She wanted to meet. "Talk like adults," she wrote, "clear the air." I didn't respond right away. I read her message. Once. Then again the next morning. Then again 3 days later. Not because I was considering it, But because I needed to understand what I felt. Anger? No. Curiosity, maybe. Grief. Yes, that one lingered. I called my mother that night. Told her about the email. About the weight of it. She listened quietly. Then said, closure isn't something you're given, Claire. It's something you choose. I closed my eyes. She was right. So. I didn't meet Madison. I didn't reply. But I did write her a letter I'd never send. In it, I told her how much it hurt. How much I loved her. How deeply I believed we were building something sacred. And how cruel it felt watching her cut me out like expired milk. I told her I forgave her. Not because she asked, but because I deserved peace. Then I folded the letter, placed it in the back of my journal, and lit a lavender candle. Not as a ritual, but as a reminder. Peace doesn't need an audience. In November, the cafe hosted a gratitude wall. We left pens and sticky notes by the entrance. By week's end, the wall was overflowing. One morning, I found a note in unfamiliar handwriting. I used to think family had to hurt. Thank you for showing me softness. I stared at it, breath caught. Was it from someone I knew? Someone in the mentorship group? I didn't know. But it didn't matter, because that's what Fern and Bloom had become, a sanctuary for the wounded and the rising. I walked home that night in the cold, coat zipped to my chin, heart warm. My life hadn't turned out the way I planned. It had turned out better, not cleaner. Not simpler, but real. And for the first time in years, I didn't want to rewrite the past. I wanted to live the present fully, one moment, one customer, one cup of coffee at a time. December arrived wrapped in frost and fairy lights. The cafe windows fogged up before noon. Customers carved hearts and names into the condensation. A mother nursed her newborn by the fire, while students tapped away on laptops. Fern and Bloom had officially become a haven, not just for others, for me too. Every Friday, I hosted free refill Fridays. Buy a drink, refill all day. It wasn't about profit. It was about presence. People stayed longer, talked deeper, laughed louder. I watched friendships form between strangers. Watched loneliness dissolve over LATTES. One afternoon, as I was wiping down tables, I saw someone walk in holding a toddler. The child had curls like spun sugar and eyes that reminded me of someone I used to know. The woman smiled. Hi, I'm Naomi. This is my son, Theo. I blinked. The name Theo sat like a memory I hadn't accessed in years. I'm Claire, I said, returning her smile. Welcome. She looked around. This place feels like home already. I couldn't explain it, but something in her warmth settled me. Later that day, she returned to the counter. Did you design this place? She asked. I nodded. Double quotes every inch. Well, she said, thank you for building somewhere people can breathe. She left and I stood there, heart strangely full. That evening, I opened my journal and flipped past the unsent letter to Madison. I found a blank page and wrote, you survived, Claire. Not just the betrayal. You survived the silence, the self-doubt, the shadow of her absence. You became someone new and somehow, still you. Christmas neared. The cafe glowed. GARLANDS hung above doorways. Scented candles flickered, and the gratitude wall turned into the wish wall. People wrote, I hope my sister talks to me again. I wish I could forgive myself. I want to open my own bookstore someday. And beneath it all, one note in shaky handwriting, I wish I had a sister like you. I stared at it. Frozen, I hadn't spoken the word sister in months. It felt far and now, distant. But this note, this anonymous flicker of yearning, it cracked something open. That night, I went home and opened the old photo album. Buried in the middle, a picture of Madison and me, back when things were easy. Before truth peeled everything raw. We were barefoot in the kitchen, laughing over burnt pancakes. I touched the photo gently, not to rekindle anything, but to grieve what would never return. I didn't hate her anymore. I didn't love her either. I felt gratitude. Not for what she did, but for what she broke, so I could rebuild. A few days before Christmas, I hosted an open mic night. The cafe was packed. Someone read a piece called People Aren't Houses. They said, people aren't houses. You can't live in them forever. Some collapse, some lock you out, but some leave the door open when you need it most. The audience applauded gently. I felt every syllable in my bones. Afterward, as I was cleaning, Naomi came up again. I was wondering, do you ever host birthday parties here? I paused. Sometimes. Why? She smiled. Theo turns to next month. He doesn't have many people, but I'd love to celebrate somewhere warm. I felt tears press at the backs of my eyes. You found the right place, I whispered. I didn't need to be anyone's sister anymore. I didn't need an invite to any party that treated me like a ghost. I had built a place where no one was invisible, where no one had to earn belonging. The holidays came and went in a blur of gingerbread, jazz, and late-night closings. And one evening, just before closing, I stood in the middle of Fern and Bloom. Alone. I turned off the music, dimmed the lights, and sat quietly in the corner chair. The place whispered. It breathed. It lived, and so did I. January snow fell soft and slow. The world outside turned white, but fern and bloom stayed warm. Inside, we lit cinnamon candles, baked blueberry scones, put out blankets on the armchairs. We weren't just a cafe anymore. We were a place where healing had a seat at every table. Naomi's son Theo had his birthday party with us the first weekend of the year. Only a handful of people came: a cousin, a neighbor, one older couple who brought balloons and chocolate chip muffins. But the love in that room, it felt like 100 hearts humming in sync. Theo squealed as he smashed his cake. Naomi beamed. And I felt honored. To witness something real. To hold space for joy that didn't need to be loud to be sacred. Later, Naomi pulled me aside. You're more than a cafe owner, Claire. I smiled. What am I? Then, you're a gatherer, she said. You gather people. You make them feel seen. That night, her words echoed in my chest. I had spent a lifetime trying to be seen by family. By Madison. By anyone who might love me back. But somewhere along the way, I became the one who saw. And it was enough. A few weeks later, something strange happened. A letter arrived, handwritten, no return address, inside a card with tiny gold hearts. In one line, I didn't know how to say I was sorry. No name, no signature. But the handwriting, I'd know it anywhere. Madison. I held the card for a long time. The old ache stirred, familiar but quieter now. I didn't cry. I didn't smile either. I just breathed. Then I tucked the card away, between the pages of the journal that held her unsent memories, not because I needed it, but because it marked something, the end of a chapter I thought would haunt me forever. Spring began to bloom early. By March, the first crocuses peeked through the sidewalk cracks. Of the cafe, we opened the windows, put fresh flowers on the tables, started poetry nights again. And one day, a woman came in with tear-streaked cheeks and shaky hands. I didn't ask what happened. I just handed her tea, sat beside her, and when she was ready, she whispered, I got disinvited from my own sister's baby shower. I blinked. The past brushed against me, let his breath. I didn't say me too. I didn't need to. I just reached for her hand and said, you're safe here. That's the truth I carry now. Family is not built on matching blood. It's built on presence, on witnessing each other's becoming, on showing up again and again even when no one claps for it. I still think about that summer sometimes. The diapers. The tantrums. The exhaustion. How I loved Ethan like he was my own, and how, in the end, I wasn't even family enough for cake. But the bitterness? It left quietly one morning when a little girl handed me a crayon drawing that said, Miss Claire is like magic. I taped that drawing to the register. And every day, when someone walks in feeling too much or not enough, I remember, I once gave everything to someone who erased me. And I survived. Not just that I blossomed. You can't control who shows up for you, but you can choose who you show up as. And me? I show up with open doors, warm drinks, and enough softness for those still learning they deserve to be loved. That's the legacy I'll leave. Not a sisterhood built on guilt, but a sanctuary built on grace.